Hey, what's up, everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So, got another Procreate video for you. So this one's obviously showing the interface, and what I want to do here is just, this is a piece that I'm working on, and I want to kind of go over a little bit of the layering system and what I do to execute a piece like this, where I've got a lot of little different things going on. So one of the first things I set up after I get my rough sketch in place is I start to add a blue line in to separate parts of the detail that I'm trying to refine. So I set a layer set to screen mode. Right there, you can see it under lighten, under the blending mode. And I just paint that a solid blue, and anything beneath that layer is the rough lines. Anything above that layer is the cleanup lines. And I'll just do that any number of times to get to a level of refinement that I'm happy with. So that's one of the things that I do. Like for instance, I'm working on this planet back here. I wanted to give it a more fantastical vibe, so I did these kind of weird looking mountains and a couple planets in the sky to let you know that it's an outer world environment, that it's off. It's definitely not the planet Earth. I don't think we can see Saturn from where we're at. Not last time I looked anyways. Maybe as a very small dot at times. But yeah, so at any rate, so what I'll do is I'll get a rough going of whatever area I'm working on, and I get a little bit layer intensive, even in the line art stage at times, because I'm trying to kind of work through things. So if I toggle some of these on and off, you can see that I'm just slowly adding to the piece, and sometimes I'll do things on separate layers. I'm also going to show you how I did this line art effect back here, because I get a lot of questions on this, and I'll end up addressing this in a few different programs, because I know that I use a few different softwares, and what might work in one may not work in the other for somebody. So we'll address that as well. But let me go ahead and get over to this planet. And you see, I got to bounce around and get back to it. And I should probably name these. You just simply click on the layer right there, and then where it says layer 13, and you can rename. But I really don't use them that way. I actually use them pretty quickly. I'm using the technical pencil there, and I'll just kind of keep building up, like so this particular area, I'm trying to see a bit of that swirling texture that goes around a planet like this, and obviously since it's a fantasy based design, I really don't have to abide to any kind of reference, but it doesn't hurt to look at reference for things like this. I probably should have. I probably would have got the rings looking a bit more accurate or something like that. So the other thing I wanted to make sure I mention in this process, one of the things that I find very helpful about doing this type of design work, or art creation on the iPad Pro and Procreate here is, or any digital software really, is that I use a lot of layers, and I use light and dark together. So essentially, and that can also be construed as erasing, but I'll actually use white and black together in a lot of parts of this painting, or drawing I should say. I'm probably going to take it to paintwork, but I got a little bit too end of the line work on this one, so I'll probably do a version of both, because generally I wouldn't refine to this level for a painting. But it's the more I look at it, the more I kind of want to see it as a painting, or as a fully finished kind of comic art rendition. So essentially, after I get enough of this dark in place, I'm just kind of scribbling, I guess, and tapering some of the lines, and getting some dark spots, getting some light spots, and almost doing this more like I would paint it. But once I do that, I'll hold over an area of white, and then I'll just draw back with white to kind of find a bit more of the light source, and round out the form. And I'll just go back and forth from dark to light. So that's one of the things that I do, even in the line art stage of my digital art creation now, just because it's so easy to do. And the other thing is, in a lot of my pieces, I'll throw in some grayscale or some blue tone for where the shadows would be. I talked about that a little bit in the last video, so you can check that out. But essentially, that's another way to kind of get this visual guide of more of a three-dimensional aspect of your work. And then the other thing is, like I said, if you're doing this and you're not really knowing where to go with the lines and what you're trying to see, then that's when you just start pulling reference. I think I'll be able to work my way through it. It may not be the best planet I've ever done or something like that, but that's just one of the things that you can do. Now, another thing that helps in in creating stuff like this is having some, especially with Procreate, is having some basic shapes. So you can get these online and download them, but one of the things that you can do, I'll just kind of show you what I'm thinking about doing here. On this planet, I'm thinking that I want to see a shadow right through here a bit more, right? And although I can just freehand this and it'll probably be pretty darn close, you know, if you've got these primitive shapes at hand, you might as well use them. So essentially what you can do is you add a layer, go to your imported brushes. I was able to find a set that were primitive shapes, and I'd have to look up, you know, but you can make these as well. Just keep that in mind. You just basically import a basic shape and you convert it to a brush, and there's lots of tutorials on that. But essentially, you just press down, you get your shape. Make sure you do it on a new layer so you can fully edit it. Double tap, so 2 fingers on the screen on that layer, tap, and then scroll across to lighten it. And what you can do there is just move that into place, and these control points work like this. If you grab on each one, you can now distort. You have to click and hold. So, you know, what I'd recommend doing, go back once, a couple times, scale it down. So you put 2 fingers on the screen, scale inward, and my fingers are outside of the shape there, just so you know. So I'll scale it to fit right across where I want that shadow to be aligned, and then let go. So really I don't even have to distort it, but just so you're aware, if you want to distort something, like I did the rings there, you would click and pull that, and then twist it and rotate it and all that good stuff. So double tap to go back, click off the tool there, and then now this gives me my alignment for the shadow. You know, and really, you know, you could erase all this if you wanted and really give yourself a shape to work with, or you could just obviously make another circle and erase. That'll give you another alignment. I'm just going to eyeball this side now, and then obviously we don't want it on our hair there. So that just gives me an idea for where that shadow would go. So just a placeholder really. And I'll go back to this and go back to it. Got to make sure I'm not on that tool now. Go back to my sketch brush. So sketching. Come on. There we go. Technical pencil. That's my settings, just in case you're wondering. And I can go back in here. And now I can start to shade a little more deliberately in that area. So I got to make sure I'm not on the layer for the guide, right? And just start to shade, get some more shadow in place there. Again, if I wasn't too sure about how this would look, add a new layer. Layers are basically always going to safeguard you from, you know, making horrendous mistakes in your artwork and having to go back. You know, and like I always say, digital art has so many options for adjusting. It's not that big of a deal. But if you could save yourself some headache, layers will definitely do that for you. So now you can see I've got that shadow more in place. It didn't need to be perfect. More or less just wanted to show you how I work through certain aspects of the artwork. You know, most of this entire artwork is entirely freehand. But there are instances like that where it makes a little bit more sense to use some guides, build yourself some structure to work over, and then, you know, it becomes a lot easier in that process. So like with the rings here, if I find myself struggling to get these rings the way that I'm envisioning them, I could easily distort some of those circles into place, those primitive shapes, and it'll give me a guideline. But I'm probably just gonna freehand this, and you know, whatever I get, I guess. So it may not be perfect, but you know, I'm sure there's some mathematical way to draw these perfect without using the primitives as well. So there's lots of things to look into for that. But for this one, we're just gonna eyeball it. That illustrious, famous term that everybody likes to use. I'm just gonna eyeball it. So yeah, so something like that. I don't know that I would shade these a whole lot. Maybe a little bit of line art shading, not a whole lot. These would more, this planet would, you know, take more shape with the coloring. And then I'll probably do a little bit of a darker edge on this side here to kind of reinforce that highlight. And, and that's enough because I really don't want to over detail. It's probably a little over detailed as it is because it's not a focal point. The focal point in this particular shot is runs to me, kind of runs like through here. It's like her head pointing down to the shoulder piece pointing down. So that's the whole, layout of it. And just so you know, so people don't get the wrong impression if they see this and go, man, it looks familiar or something. I did get the initial concept from looking at, I got inspired by a piece from Thor where Natalie Portman was a, Asgardian princess or something. I don't know, but she was wearing the armor type setup. So you can find that shot and see kind of where I went from that. But I obviously drew a very different face, very different composition altogether. Or I guess parts of the composition are the same, but it was basically just a head and shoulder shot of her. But it kind of inspired me, and I thought, yeah, it would look cool if I took it a bit further and did something kind of wild like this. So just so you know, I like to always point out when I do have ideas from something else. And, most of my ideas are my own, but sometimes I will look at reference and pull inspiration from it, and that this particular piece was an example of that. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you these lines on the back real quick before this video gets too awfully long like they tend to do. So essentially what I did there, I knew I wanted this shading, and a lot of the stuff was all freehand up until these like perfectly parallel lines or whatever. So, and I also cheated a little bit here. I created a piece of this texture, copied it, but then I drew over top of my own texture creation to make it look more freehand. So, I find myself doing that more and more because it saves time and it gives you an overall more professional look to the end result. So let me show you how I did the lines here. And then after I'm satisfied with anything that I add, I'll click here, merge down, and I'll try to conserve, because depending on what size file you create in Procreate, you'll get a certain amount of layers. So you just have to be aware of that, and then conserve your layers when possible. So like things like this where I save this, I'm obviously already done with it, so I don't need to save that now. I'll swipe over, delete that, and delete this one because I just don't need them. But I'll keep a backup of some things until I feel comfortable enough to do away with it. So let's go to the topmost area, click Add New Layer, and I'll show you how I did these fancy schmancy lines over here. So I pick a brush, and I'll usually stay with the same brush I'm working with. And the neat thing about Procreate, or one of my favorite aspects of Procreate, is that if you drag down and hold, it'll snap to a straight line, and then wherever you release that line, that's what you get. Highly useful tool. That is, I can't stress how neat that feature is. I wish all programs had that. I really do. It's tremendous for perspective. For instance, this already has great perspective tools, but that one feature right there comes in handy, God, just so many ways. But all right, enough of me just really bragging about that feature, but it's pretty cool. So what I'll do is kind of move this over, and you got to play with this a bit to get it right. But I'll drag it over, and see that's not even as close as I want it. I just want a tiny little gap there. And this is all subjective to whatever you're trying to accomplish. And then you click here, merge down, swipe over. I swipe to the left, so you can't see my hand obviously, and then duplicate, and click the move icon and drag it over. And I've mentioned this in other videos. It starts off slow. Oh, that's actually pretty good. It starts off slow, but it gains momentum. Merge down, swipe over, duplicate, move tool, repeat process. Select off, check the work. See, it's a little far off. And just so you know, if you're trying to get it absolutely perfect, you would actually just align one of the lines over top of the one next to it and delete it. It's a little more work, but you can get an absolutely perfect series of lines if need be. Merge down, swipe over, duplicate, excuse me, and see where we're at here. So yeah, again, it starts a little slow, but not in respect to if you had to draw these lines and you kept getting mad because you weren't getting them perfect and you wanted them perfect, then in that respect, this isn't slow at all. Let's see, swipe over, nope, see I mess up every now and then. Merge down, duplicate, and you see each time it's doubling, so right at the very end, it takes effect and you're completed. And and the thing is, you can always save these. I always suggest that as well. Whenever you make stuff like this, just categorize it, save it in any way that you can. Okay, so what was it? I'm getting confused there. Merge down, swipe over, duplicate. We're almost there. That's pretty close, but I just want to show you that if you take the time, you can get them pretty close to perfect. And the way you'll see it is as you pan back, if you see a gap in the line, then you obviously messed up or whatever. All right, swipe over, duplicate, and this should be enough. You guys are probably like, goodness, Rob, it took forever. Why are you doing this? Madness. It's pure madness. All right, so, and I hit the wrong one again. Sheesh. Okay, merge down. There we go. We're done. We got our lines. So now, let's take these lines and let's go ahead and move them over to here. And I like to rotate them just so they look a little bit more, not so up and down, which it doesn't matter. This is all, again, preference and subjective to whatever you're looking for. But now what happens is you've got a great way to add some tone wherever you want it. And there's a lot of options to use something like this, so I could bring it over to the planet here and I could erase everything but the land masses. That might provide a unique effect. In fact, I guess I'll try it since I've already got lines there. But just so you know, that's what I did for here. I did these darker lines, I crosshatched those myself, and then I added the straight lines, and then I erased parts of it to show the highlights on the cape. So that's just a quick effect, and real quick if you save this stuff. And then you just go through here, select a solid brush. I guess it could be solid or a soft edge, but I prefer to use a solid. And you could just erase this first around the planet probably, and get the lines off her hair there. Something like that. And then zoom in a bit further. Make sure you get all the little, missing specks there. Okay, and then zoom in a bit further and, decide, all right, do I want this? I'd say I'd want it on the landmass. If anything, I would probably do solid where the bodies of water, or picture where the bodies of water are, or maybe solid with a little bit of light source. So let's try that. Let's just erase it. I guess it doesn't matter, but we'll just see if it looks right. I don't think I'll keep this, but it's always good to experiment. But this is essentially how I would add bits of shading or line work like this. And the same thing can be done with dots, faded dots, you name it. It's just and I'm sure there's probably some cool brushes for this type of stuff as well that you can probably get your hands on. Who knows? Maybe I'll make some of those. I don't know. But it's just a neat way to kind of add some quick depth to your work, and add some variety to it, really. So one of the things I always stress when doing this type of line work is you just don't want to shade everything the same way. So the more that you can add these little bits of variances without seeming without making your work look too distracted or bombarded with these effects, the more that you can kind of paint this visual picture in a really detailed fashion, so you can end up with this artwork that's just really dynamic because it has all these different cool textures kind of working throughout, not just this one style of shading through your entire piece. Like if you're shading hair, it should be a different texture than if you're shading, pants or whatever. You just don't want to make everything the same line work and weight, because it'll just it'll appear a bit flat. So I'm picturing the land masses and the water separation is something like this, and then we'll pan back and see if it works. Yeah, and I mean, it at least lets you know that there's a different planet back there. I don't know that I like that, but I'll mess with it. I think that I would have probably made the lines a bit thinner in retrospect, and then you could play with the opacity. And what I'd probably do as well is I would tone it down like this, and then I'd go back and draw over top, or I may just leave it. But I would probably draw my own lines over top, and the feeling that I like, or the look I like from that, is that it just gives it more of a penciled look than an overly technical look, which is something I'm usually after in my work. So yeah, so that's about it. I mean, there's obviously lots of great features inside of this program, and I could go on and on and on, but hopefully that's giving you a little bit better idea. Like I said, when I originally started using this program, as I get more confidence with it, I'll bring more and more tutorial-based kind of walkthroughs and things like that to you. So hopefully that'll help you out. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to like, share, subscribe. It helps me progress the channel. And also, if you could check out my Gumroad and my Patreon, it helps me keep doing what I do here and keep bringing content your way. So thanks very much for tuning in. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.